S.J.Gathercole, welcome to the Goblin Guest Hour! Yay!
I'm S.J.Gathercole, but I go with Steph in my everyday life. Two books at the moment. So the first book that I did was like a mystery novel with a little romance between the two like private detectives in there. Same-sex couple solving mysteries together. That was I kind of knew I wanted to do a sequel to that, but I also knew I wanted like a bit of a break in between. So I then wrote Patterns of Us, which is the book that comes out at the end of May, that you've got a copy of. Second chance romance between two guys that they were together as kind of in their late teens, early 20s, and kind of circumstances bring them back together as when they're a bit older, and they have to sort of work out kind of whether they can learn from kind of their past mistakes and kind of come back together. Kind of there's some ADHD rep in there. There's some chronic illness representation in there. I was really keen with this second one. I knew I wanted to do something around chronic illness or disability or something along those lines in a romance novel, because I think one of the big things with both my books was that I really wanted to put characters into genres that they're not normally featured in. Big thing is, I think everybody deserves a love story. So I think, initially, particularly with writing Patterns of Us, in my mind, when I started writing it, Lucas was very much the character that I thought I was putting myself into, because he has ADHD, which when I started writing him, I didn't intend for him to have ADHD. I was writing, I suppose, bits of my personality into his actions and behaviour. And I went, oh my God, I've given him my ADHD. That's what I've done. I was doing a lot of research and had a lot of conversations with different charities. Sort of thought, oh yeah, Lucas has taken on quite a lot of me. And it was only as I started writing it and was like, oh no, actually, there's quite a lot of my experience in Russell as well. Like, I want people to feel seen, and I want people to take something from it rather.
As a reader of it, I think that you did a great job, and like you said, you're never going to get it spot on for absolutely everyone, but because it's a personal experience for people, but there's definitely things where you can go, yeah, I can picture that, or yeah, I've done something similar to that, and I think that's like a really great balance that you've got through that book. So congratulations.
I tried with my first book. I've sent out queries and did all the things you're supposed to do, and I got a couple of hybrid publishers come to me and sort of say, oh yeah, we take it on. And when I looked into them, they didn't have particularly good reputation, so I didn't bother. And I got a couple of agents. I had one agent sort of say, oh no, I really love the story. I just wonder, just to make it a bit more commercial, whether you could remove the romance between them. I was like, no, because that's kind of the whole point of the story, is that they're a couple that solve crime together. And I think I got that message, or variations of that message, a few times from a few different publishers or agents, and I just thought, I'm going to have to, in order for it to get picked up traditionally, I'm going to have to change it so much, like beyond what I want it to be, that it wasn't worth it. So I sort of stuck to my guns and thought, no, I'm just going to do it myself. My other half did have to kind of convince me and sort of, be like, well, you didn't write it for it to just sit on your computer. It wasn't going to have the same level of control, and I would have to change it too much, I think, for it to fit. I was like, no, do it myself.
I think that's one of the many benefits of doing it indie route. It's like, you have got as much control as you want with it.
Yeah.
A lot of authors do here, like, to make it more commercial, to make it, but then it takes away the individuality of it as well.
Because it's not seen, because it should be seen. I always say, like, I think particularly with LGBT fiction, it's so often kind of pigeonholed into a kind of the romance section, or kind of like coming out tragedy. And I was like, I wanted to show that, we exist in everyday life. We're here in all elements of life. We're doing all manners of jobs, and therefore we should be in every genre as ourselves. His love story, he just happens to have a chronic illness. That was just a part of him. And so, yes, it does impact the story, and we have to write around it, but that's not what the story's about. His life goes far beyond that. So I'm one of these writers that I tend to start with big character profiles of like their what are their pet peeves, what are their what do they enjoy doing as hobbies, what's their kind of family history, where I do like a bit of a timeline for them up to the point of the book, like what's their backstory. So even stuff that doesn't make it into the book, I've thought about.
Picture them like in your head. Are they like fictional friends in your head now? Of like,
I can't get to sleep because the characters are chattering away in my brain. Not even necessarily just like the indie author route, but in the process of writing in general with both books, I realised. So when I started writing The People We Trust, which was my first book, I started writing it when I was at uni, which is like 10 years ago. And I wanted it to be like this really gritty, like crime thriller. And I only got so far with it, and then was really struggling to pursue it any further. And kind of when I came back to it a couple of years ago and decided I was going to do it as this, this couple that solve crime together, and have like the romance subplot, it suddenly became so much easier to write. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm just not as like gritty and cynical and cool as I thought I was. I'm actually like a lot softer than I realised. For The People We Trust, you would have to kind of go, I think, like a magnifying glass, because I feel like that's very detective-y. Coffee cup, because the two characters, that's how they bond. They're like both like real bad coffee snobs. Maybe a book, because that's another thing that they kind of bond over, is like one of them is a really big reader. And that for Patterns of Us, I think it would have to be a musical note for Lucas. And for both of them, because he owns his like record shop. A book again, because that's like a big part of who Russell is. And then I'm going to say a rubber duck, which I think people that have read the book would understand.
What is your writing process?
So I did both books really differently. I always write, so every first draft that I write by hand, kind of edit as I type it. So that's kind of then draft 2, and then I print it all off and go through it and mark it all up. That kind of dual timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing flashbacks and then flash forwards. So I was kind of writing it in a really haphazard way. I was writing scenes as they came to me and then trying to force them into some kind of order. So I think I've got it. And then I'd come back to and be like, no, these all need to move again. The guy with like the big board behind him with all like the... Yeah. And I was like, sometimes I read like my own notes and I'm like, why? Because I would like to do a sequel to Patterns at some point. I kind of left it open for myself that I could.
Do you prefer the dialogue scenes or like world building scenes?
Dialogue.
What's your preference?
Dialogue all the way. I typically will a lot of the time, a first draft of mine will be like pure dialogue, and then I go back and add the world building and the description, and sometimes I hear them as like almost like a podcast. Like
you build entire worlds and people, and it just out of your heads.
I think the first thing I ever wrote was basically like a Doctor Who self-insert fanfic before I even really knew what fanfic was. Like a little nugget of something, whether it's a plot or a character, or sometimes I get like a scene. So like, funnily enough, Patterns of Us, the first scene that I had in my head was like one of the big confrontation scenes between the two of them.
Such a power for a writer, you get to be the fly on the wall and then also have the power to just change however you want it to come out.
Often have like an idea of where I want the characters to end up, but a lot of the time how they get there is like entirely down to them.
The characters are the ones in power. How interesting. The tables have turned. Which character would you bring to the real world for the day, and what would you be doing together?
I think from the first book it would be Gareth and Faith. They're like Faith in particular was like a character that when I initially wrote her, she was supposed to be like a side character. She really wasn't meant to be in it very much, and she kind of just kept forcing her way into the plot. So all of a sudden she went from this character who was only ever going to be in like the first chapter to being like a secondary character. She was suddenly in it like all the way through. But her and Gareth are kind of like best friends from school, so I would love to just spend the day just hanging out with them. Their dynamic is just really fun. We would probably just go. So that book is set in Leeds, which is where I'm based. So we would probably just go into town and just have like a mooch. I think that would just be like ideal. And from patterns, I think I'd have to like bring Penny in and just ask her for life advice, because Penny's that kind of like just like really calm, like wise influence that I'm like, I need that in my life. Behaving particularly well, she'll just tell him. She's like, no, you're being a twat. Badly named soft toys. There's the badly named penguin in the book.
3 weeks. It's 3 weeks today.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Are you doing any events this year?
I am, yeah. Scribe Fest down in Northampton in just June, end of June. And then I've got Jupiter Cloud Fest and Literary Escape Fest in Sheffield and Leeds in July. Christmas time, I'm doing another Jupiter Cloud Festival in York. A little launch event at a local cafe as well the week after Patterns of Us comes out. And I try and do this as I'm writing. And it's not for everyone, so maybe it's a bit of a hot take, but short chapters or chapters with plenty of like mid-chapter breaks, so it's obvious where I can stop midway. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's a good plot. Yeah. It's got a nice plot.
We love a bouncy floppy book.